Hey everybody, and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program RP-0. This is part one of what is going to be a multi-part Twitch recap from our Extra Life 2019 live stream recap. Yeah, anyway, so we are picking up right where we left off at our old series, or in the other episodes, in that we are relaunching to orbit the lab module that will be part of the Tremonia station rebuild, uh, made slightly more difficult by the fact that we're doing this all live and with lots and lots of very lovely conversation going on in chat and amongst other things. So expect a lot of shuttle launches here in these recap episodes. We have a lot of stuff to cover, and not that many episodes in which I would like to do it. But this first mission did stand out to me as deserving its own episode, and so it's going to be getting its own episode. Booster Sep was a little while ago because I was still filling you in on all the things that you needed to know, and now we are just in our burn to orbit. Again, this is the lab module, and it is pushing very, very close to the maximum capacity that this shuttle is rated for. I think we checked after we got to orbit, it was something like 86 tons of a 90-ton capacity. So there will be a OMS burn towards the end of this to circularize out our orbit. We will not make it all the way to orbit on our main engines, which is, I guess, more realistic, seeing as how that's how the space shuttle actually did it, just to avoid leaving that EFT in orbit. Jettison it a little before you actually get to orbit so that it burns up in the atmosphere, although we did have some issues with it burning up in the atmosphere. As we did get a whole lot closer to orbit this time than we did last time. We tried to launch this when we had the engine failure on the transfer stage of the lab module itself, prompting us to deorbit it, build it again, and basically double dip on 3 Kerbals to low Earth orbit contracts. There is the EFT off and away, so we will lock the gimbals on our RS-25s and fire up those 4 AJ-10 118Ks to do the rest of our circularization bits for us. It does take a little time, seeing as how our TWR is quite small, but that's okay. That's what OMS engines are for. Small, light corrections. Not grand going to orbity kind of things. So we have added solar panels, and I hope... Oh no, we didn't need batteries for this one because there's lots of battery in the cupola and in the lab module itself. That's right. I'm getting confused over all of my missions that need to be remembered. Happens a lot. But we will wait until we are on the daylight side, extend one of these panels on our lab module just to make sure that we can properly boot it up and gain control. I'd hate to have to EVA a Kerbal to manually extend a solar panel so that this thing can boot properly. And then we'll start plotting for the moon. Lucky everyone here, we get to actually see this mission all the way through to completion in one solid episode, thanks to the magic of post-editing. So we will say goodbye to SKS Heavy as we get ourselves set up to make this burn to our translunar injection burn, I guess is the way we want to phrase it. Like properly and stuff. With the node all set up, we'll get ourselves angled in, make sure our gimbal is unlocked, and then start our ullage push before lighting up our experimental lander engine that is used for almost never for landings. And the shuttle flying past us as we accelerate away from it, and the moon cresting very nicely through the scattered horizon right over there. This game does make you want to take a step back every now and again. It is kind of a long burn, not nearly as long as some of the others. I think we were looking at about the 4-minute mark, give or take, which is really not that bad for pushing 86 tons to TLI. This engine does kind of work wonders. The little golden fuel orbs down there at the bottom are our dedicated RCS tanks. They are locked at the moment because that is going to be held as our reserve docking fuel, just in case we went a little under budget on our transfer fuel. And of course, KSB can't decide if we actually have an encounter or not. It's saying no, but we absolutely do have an encounter. I'm just gonna look at this map view and say, oh yeah, that is definitely an encounter. Boom, there it is. It's actually not too bad of an encounter either. So we will set up a node here to put ourselves into orbit, hopefully kicking that ascending or descending node way out to a very high altitude to make our inevitable plane change maneuver relatively cheap. And so, actually, I think we're going to make an adjustment on the way in. Is that what we did? I haven't quite caught up on sleep yet, so I'm not entirely sure on which method we took or how things have changed across the many missions, but we're only about 9.9 degrees off, so I think we're just going to go ahead and go for it. A 10-degree plane change at high altitude around the moon is really not that expensive, and with 1,500 meters per second left in the tank before we ever even dive into our emergency docking fuel, I think we've got some room to spare on this. So we'll go ahead and plot the plane change maneuver way out here, and lucky us, it looks like if we play our cards right, we can get a second pass rendezvous, and with all the horsepower behind this engine, our current thrust-to-weight ratio here at the moon is 10 something, so a very quick jump back to the shuttle to do some time warpy bits and bring them up to a appropriate orbit, or rather, I guess, bring them down to an appropriate orbit. We need to be below 325 kilometers, and above 150 on our periapsis side in order to satisfy this contract. And since we might just be here a few days, we might as well make that very brief correction before jumping back out here to the lab module, which in just a couple of brief hours, and now 2 minutes from now, we'll need to make that plane change maneuver and hopefully bring that separation at closest approach in line to something we can turn into a first pass rendezvous. That would be a whole lot of fun, because then the quicker we can move through this mission, the better off I think we'll all be. So now just firing the RCS ports while watching that separation at closest approach fall. I think 1.2 kilometers was the best we were able to work it at this altitude. We'll make another correction as we come around. I don't know, 90 degrees from our encounter would be about here. I don't think we're going to do it, but we are going to take a screenshot because, man, that's pretty awesome. We'll get ourselves dialed in a whole lot closer before we go ahead and make the burn to rendezvous, and we'll try to make some corrections as we start to match our velocities and see if we can't bring ourselves in just a little bit closer. It is a 670 some odd meter per second burn, which is roughly half of our Delta V budget. So it looks like we will be coming in with some excess fuel on board, and well, that's never a problem. So thanks to a little bit of RCSing, we've got our separation at closest approach down to, well, it was 80 meters. Now we're up in the almost 200 meter range, but that is perfectly acceptable for performing a rendezvous and eventual docking in station construction. But not wanting to just let it go, I'll go ahead and dial it into 40, fire the engine again, and then walk it right back up to 200 something. So approaching our target at a blistering 6.7 meters per second. We're kind of in that odd zone where time warp doesn't quite work well, and I don't really want to risk it. This does give us a little time to assess our approach and see on which side we would like to show up on so that we can dock appropriately. A bit difficult to see from this angle, and we have braked too much, and the station is starting to drift away from us, but we're also trying to adjust our angle and see on which axis we need to come in. So the gaining so much distance on the station was entirely unintentional, and just me not paying attention to how my lateral translations have affected our approach speed. We were coming in so fast I didn't even think to check, but you know, at this point I'd already been awake for, you know, maybe 18 hours. So not to be surprised, things fall apart pretty quickly after a while. So I would expect lots of silly mistakes in the future and me just plain old not thinking things through. But there is the docking hub. That is the part we need to attach ourselves to. The very top node, no less, which will make things very nice, very easy. Simple as long as we can line up the approach correctly, and thankfully we actually do have pretty good balance on these RCS ports. Still just a little bottom heavy, but it is certainly not the worst thing we'll dock during this construction project. So at least we have that going for us. And we'll line up our axes and start to drift in, and at some point we'll start to consider which way we want the door to face, which of course screws up absolutely everything. So we'll hit the brakes and try to realign before we start scraping paint. There's a little nudge. There's another little nudge. 9 or 10 more, and boom, docked. How nice. The, I guess, third part, well, we got the main fuel tank, the adapter hub, life support tank, and main hub, and now the lab. So we have all of those parts on station already. Just a few more parts to launch: the habitat module, the power supply module, and the docking adapter. Yeah, I think that's all we have left to finish this construction project, and all but one of them will go up on a shuttle. So after draining most of the fuel, we will detach the transfer tug and deorbit it around the moon before jumping back to spend some time with our shuttle crew here in low Earth orbit, as they are walking off the last few days of their stay in orbit for no apparent reason contract. And then we'll start plotting our deorbit burn. Looking very carefully at how to set this up so that maybe we can actually come in over a runway this time, and see how well that works out for us. Spoilers, not very well. So per the manufacturer's instructions, seeing what we had to go through one of the last times we did this, we will be venting some excess fuel after we make our deorbit burn, of course. Just to lighten up our weight and make it a lot easier to balance the spacecraft during reentry. So part of that is going to be to dump all of our waste products and a bunch of the nitrogen tetroxide and Aerozine 50 we will not be using. All of this fuel locked here in the cockpit is all we should need for descent. It's actually a little more than we'll need for RCS control during our descent. So for right now, we will pump it into the aftmost tank so that we can help keep our butt pinned down and our nose up during the vast majority of our reentry procedure. We'll bring out atmospheric autopilot to help keep us stable and level, because doing this without computer controls is just not going to be a thing anymore. And well, as it turned out, we're at the much lower end of our orbit when we made this deorbit burn, so we entered the atmosphere far sooner than what we anticipated, which has the very interesting result of us coming in very deep over the Pacific, and already starting to shed some speed and try to turn as much of it into lift. It's becoming somewhat apparent to pretty much everyone that Florida's not going to happen this run. I hate to break it to you. Massive spoilers. The larger concern, however, was if dirt was even going to happen this run. You should know by now that my record for water landings is real bad. That's how we lost all our orange suits. And I would really, really appreciate not having to do another in memoriam video. It is particularly difficult to make. Our ablative thrusters have burned off. We're down to about 6.5 kilometers per second, and land is still absolutely nowhere in sight. I kind of wish we hadn't dumped that fuel now, because we could just pump it out through those AJ-10s and maybe just gather a little bit more. But with our speed sinking below 3 kilometers per second, the reality has to set in. We're going to be ditching in the ocean. My absolute least favorite thing to do ever. I thought we had landfall coming up very quickly. No, those are clouds. That is absolutely not dirt. So we will put what little fuel we still have through the AJ-10s now that we're atmospheric enough to rely on our control surfaces before attempting to make our ditch landing. So for the moment by moment of that, I will promptly turn you back over to old me, live during Extra Life 2019. Oh yeah, we're gonna drag our knuckles on actually touching the water for as long as possible. absolutely as long as possible. And we're probably going to put the gear down in the pothole. Yep, in the pothole. I think because the landing gear have a pretty high impact tolerance. It does seem chaotic, but I think it's the way the impact physics are calculated. It seemed to help the other SKS that had to splash down when its butt broke off. And everyone survived that one. So yeah, the Sahara is a much smarter landing path. It's virtually a capsule at that point. Wow. Alright, how long until I have to start paying attention? Current altitude 8 kilometers. Yeah, we're not nowhere near. It's time to abandon that dream crash. Just roll it on in and bleed that speed. Although at some point we're going to have to dive in a little bit, build up a little speed so we can have a glide slope that'll give us a much better chance of actually coming into stall speed as we get lower. Alright, well then Chad, I'll leave it up to you. You've got 6 kilometers of altitude to vote. Gear up, gear down. Go. Two votes up. Fine. Smoother, less stress on the frame. 3 votes up. Alright. Both. Just put the front gear down. That way the butt will hit the water first and disperse the splash, and then the landing gear will absorb the shock of the cockpit being thrown into the water. It's brilliant. Down, let's see the chaos. Mains up, nose down. Mains up, nose down, that's the way we like to clown. When we ditch our SKS. Off this coast, we'll make a mess. Alright, I'll see myself out. Many apologies. 2.5 kilometers, 158 meters per second. Sink rate's pretty tolerable. Less than 10, we should be okay. That's the way we like to drown. Nothing like some low-level clouds to improve visibility. I know. Like, I hope they just clear up. No, they're not going to clear up before we hit the water. We're going to hit these clouds is what we're going to do. 1.4 kilometers. Oh, wait. Are they going to clear up? 900 meters. $500 meters. Coming out of physics warp. Alright, we're just gonna hold it here until it's time to flare, and then we're gonna flare like we've never flared before. Just to the camera, but it kind of looked like you yawed super aggressively. Wait, what? Yeah, no. There will be no yawing. $100 pitch it. Whoa, not that much pitch up, dude. What are you doing? Okay, what's our sink rate? -3. Good. Let's see if we can't just stick with that. -4. -5. Nose it up. 100 meters per second. Nose it up. 95. Yes! Yes! Massive, massive, massive sigh of relief. Although we're still traveling at 10 meters per second. Did we lose our butt flaps? Did we break anything at all? No. We are 100% intact. Excellent. Excellent flying, Doug Hastings. You might get a break on the next mission. Master switch to disarm. Close it. Close it. Close it. So are we ever going to be able to stop? Hey, chutes did deploy. What do you know? Cannot quick save while traveling over the surface. I'm sorry, no boomies. I'll see myself out. We are slowing down, but I think the tide is going to take us all the way to shore. Get out and push. Yeah, well, man, we're not going anywhere near... Oh, why? Come on. 2.9. Do brakes work? Of course the brakes don't work. Maybe they are working. Well, this is interesting. Gear down, apply brakes. Sure, let me get out of physics warp just in case something dumb happens. Gear down, apply brakes. Nothing's changed. I just want to recover my soggy space plane. Damn you, science. 4, 3, 2, 1. Alright, bring it out of physics warp. KSP, don't do this to me. Thank you. Recover vessel. Nice. Everyone's alive. It's just a little soggy. We'll just, we'll wring it out. Putting it on a new stack will dry it out. And maybe we'll give it another run. Who knows? Anyway, that'll be in the next episode. So thank you so much for hanging out, everybody. I really do appreciate it. And I will see all of you in the next one. So until then, see you later.